Hello. This is a series of philosophical talks called The Intellect of Survival. I'm Michael, the host of this channel. How does intellect work? Why did it arise? And where does it lead us? These are the questions we pursue here. In this part of the series, we look at what philosophy has discovered about how intellect works. Today's lecture is Plato's dialogue Parmenides. Parmenides is often considered Plato's most difficult dialogue, yet it is written in simple conversational language. Plato states his thought clearly and speaks without ambiguity. He is brief and does not stop to explain every claim in detail. That is exactly what we are going to do. Stop and explain each claim in detail. We will not guess what Plato really meant or what his aims were in writing this dialogue. We will stay with the text. We are not interested in general commentary about the text. Our goal is to see how Plato analyzes concepts and how he understands the work of intellect. Plato uses the same method throughout the dialogue. So in this discussion, we will focus on just a few lines from the very beginning of Parmenides' exchange with his opponent, Aristotle. Here are those lines. "Well then," said he, "if the one exists, the one cannot be many, can it? By no means. Therefore it must not have any part of it. Otherwise, the one would be many and not one." We will examine the connection between three concepts mentioned here: the one, the many, and part. 2 lectures devoted to this analysis will help us make sense of how concepts work in Plato. Let us begin with the following point. If parts appear in the one, it becomes many and no longer remains one. The many, previously absent, appears, and the one ceases to be. What then are we to do with the assumption that the one is? If Plato wants to preserve this assumption, he must reject the possibility that the one's turning into the many would bring the one's existence to an end. But then, if the one, while turning into the many, still remains one, Plato's claim that the one cannot be many no longer holds. Next, Plato says the one must not have any part of it, and if it did, the one would be many and not one. But how can a part appear in the one? Only the many can have parts, and a part can appear in the one only from the many. Let us note one more thing. If there is the one and there is the many, and the one cannot be many, then the one is separate from the many. But then the one has a boundary, and a boundary is a part. So the one has parts, and therefore it is many. Now about Plato's question. Well then, if the one exists, the one cannot be many, can it? What is wrong with this question? The problem is that it asks only about the impossibility of the one being many, and not about the possibility of the one being many. Let us ask not one but 2 questions. Is it possible for the one to be many? Is it impossible for the one to be many? It is easy to see that Plato gives the same answer to both. Yes. He declares it impossible for the one to be many, and immediately shows how a series of properties makes the one many. In other words, while declaring it impossible for the one to be many, he himself points to how it can be many. He says it directly. The one would be many and not one, if it consisted of parts. One can deny that the one becomes many on the grounds that the many appears, and the one disappears. But as we said earlier, the one cannot disappear, given the assumption the one is. By not asking the right question, Plato does not get the right answer. For the one, it is both possible and impossible to be many. Now, about the necessity of a ground for any claim. Plato clearly recognizes this necessity. He frames his claim as a question, so that Aristotle's agreement will suggest that a ground exists. Plato does not supply the ground itself because it seems obvious to him. A ground like this: the one is the one, the many is the many, so obviously the one cannot be many. For example, a bird is not a flock of birds because a bird is a bird and a flock of birds is a flock of birds. But this is an obviousness of perception. If, however, we are talking about the concepts bird and flock of birds, we must show that their contents do not coincide. This is not difficult. The content of the concept bird is all birds, and the content of the concept flock of birds is all flocks of birds. These contents do not coincide. Therefore, it is correct to say that the concept bird cannot be the concept flock of birds. So let us try to understand why Plato does not test the ground in such a simple way. Put the claim in general form. A is A, B is B. Therefore, A cannot be B. How obvious is this really? Suppose we call one chair A and another chair B. Can we say that A is B? If we are talking about chairs as things, no, it is not one chair but two. If we are talking about their names, also no, the name A is not the name B. But if we say A is a chair and B is a chair, then A is B. That is, if we are talking about chairs as things or as names, then A is not B. If we are talking about chairs as a concept, then A is B. Conclusion. A judgment of this kind may seem obvious, but it is not correct because it is ambiguous. For it to be correct, and to serve as a ground for Plato's claim, he would have had to explain that he is using the one and the many, not as concepts, but as things, or as the names of things. But it seems that this did not fit his understanding of the relation between concept, name, and thing. Friends, write your questions and objections in the comments. I will reply and join the discussion.